That sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Fun, The Seasons. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs. I am so happy to be here with you today. Y'all are not ready for this episode. Today on the show, we're answering the question, how does nature teach us about the seasons? And also, is the ocean safe for me to swim in this summer? We're going to talk about it. But before we dive in, I want to tell you about one of our incredible partners. This is an ad by BetterHelp. I know we're coming across all kinds of suggestions to help with stress and anxiety when we're scrolling on the internet. Everything from daily walks to cold plunges to journaling. I love all three. And I'm a fan of them, but I also cannot recommend therapy and counseling enough. It has been a lifeline for me. If you've never considered therapy, give BetterHelp a try. They are the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. It's convenient too. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. My friends, get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/thatsoundsfun. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/thatsoundsfun. Today on the show, y'all, I'm so excited. I have been dying for y'all to hear this episode. I get to talk with my new friend, Rachel G. Jordan. She's a marine biologist and a spiritual guide. And using the ocean as a lens, she points us to the way God is revealed in biology. And it is so cool. Y'all know I'm fascinated by the ocean. Meg and Meg 2 are two of my very favorite movies. And we talk about it. We're talking about the coral reef, all that we don't know about the ocean and intelligence of sea creatures. And you're not even ready for the insight she has about Moses crossing the Red Sea. I am telling you, it is mind-boggling. Rachel has a new book out called If the Ocean Has a Soul. So when this came across my desk, y'all know I was all in. I also want to note that we had some technical issues in the middle of recording this, so we picked back up on a different day because I had to finish this conversation. So this is 2 parts recorded in 2 days, wearing 2 different outfits put together for one episode. If you're following along in your TSF Seasons Guidebook, we are on page 83. And as always, the guidebook is available for you at anniefdowns.com/seasons. There's a great coloring page that you could be doing while you're listening to this one as well that is featuring a shark. So make sure you've got your guidebook, anniefdowns.com/seasons. Okay, here is maybe my favorite conversation with my new friend, Rachel G. Jordan.
That sounds fun.
Rachel G. Jordan, I love you. Use your middle initial. I am dying that you are here. Our entire That Sounds Fun family is going to be thrilled you're here. Your new book is called If the Ocean Has a Soul. We're about to talk about the ocean, a whole episode about the ocean. Rachel, will you just kind of give us a little bit of your background of how this is your area of expertise?
Yeah, totally. So I am a professional marine biologist. I went to undergrad for ecology at Seattle Pacific out on the west coast of the United States. And I went to graduate school to get my master's in marine biology and ecology at James Cook in Australia, which was an incredible experience getting to dive and drive boats on the Great Barrier Reef. Loved that. And then I did a bunch of different odd marine science jobs. I worked in some organic chemistry laboratories. I did some marine aquaculture. But coral from the beginning has really had my heart. And so eventually I wound up working as the coral biologist for Dry Tortugas National Park as part of the National Park Service. So I was a very unusual sort of park ranger, getting to go scuba diving, drive boats, and work underwater for my job. And most of those experiences, like the really highlight ones, all my time in creation, it taught me so much about the character of God and how he is made evident through his creation. And those stories distilled down over long periods of time. And eventually I wound up writing the book, If the Ocean Has a Soul. So you can read about my real life experiences as a marine scientist and the theology that goes along with that.
Will you tell me a little bit about what was it about coral? What is the thing about coral that was so irresistible to you?
That's a great question. I don't entirely know what drew me to coral in the first place. I first learned about it in 10th grade biology class from my teacher. He went on a tangent talking about coral reefs and coral bleaching. And I just thought corals were such fascinating animals. they're strange. They don't move around on the ocean floor. There's only, I think, one or two species that actually do that, but they're sessile organisms. So they plant themselves as little babies, and then that's where they stay for the rest of their life. They grow like a plant. Sometimes they look like a rock, but they're actually an animal or a collection of different individual animals that can clone themselves, and they reproduce both sexually and asexually depending on the species. They're just quirky, they're weird, and they're beautiful, and they're such an important ecosystem builder. You get coral reefs from corals, and coral reefs are these underwater metropolises. They attract all sorts of fish and sharks, dolphins, all kinds of creatures frolic to coral reefs to hang out and live their lives. And so without corals, we lose these really incredible ecosystems. We lose a lot of other species as well. And I think part of why I loved corals from the beginning so much was knowing how hardy they are, how intentionally and well-designed God created them. They are incredibly resilient. And yet, because our world is changing so quickly, coral reefs worldwide are in trouble. Coral bleaching, when corals get stressed and are more susceptible to die, coral bleaching is on the rise. We see these massive bleaching events happening on an annual basis now, which historically didn't really used to be the case. And the water temperature that the corals are in, it's increasing at a rate that the corals aren't able to adapt fast enough to. So we're seeing a lot of problems with reef systems. And that's partly why coral biology is such an important field. But that's a little bit of why I love coral and why I get so excited about it.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I am, listen, everyone listening knows that this is like a heaven level episode to me because I do not get in the ocean. I think it is such a wild place. I think it is so unbelievably wild and huge, but I'm fascinated by it. My all-time favorite movie is Meg. I love Meg and I love Meg 2. I love the idea of megalodons. So
I think it's so ironic that someone who is a little bit freaked out by the ocean, like doesn't want to go in deep water, sharks maybe aren't your fave, like that's your go-to like fave movie. Like that's so wild to me. What is it about that appeals?
Let me tell you what I love about Meg. Oh, this could be our whole episode, Rachel. I think I love that there is so much. You write about this in the book, and so I'll lead you to talking about this for a second, but I love that there's so much we don't know about the ocean. It just feels there is just the idea that there could be megalodons beneath the trench is like just incredibly fun to me. I just think it's so fun how much we don't know. Why does that? You wrote about the mystery of that a lot in the book. Why does that matter to you? Why does the unknown of the ocean matter to you, particularly when it comes to God?
Well, I mean, isn't that like a beautiful allegory for what it is to know God? Like the ocean is so vast, and you're right, there's so much we don't know about it. And, considering the way things are changing, and while we're discovering new things all the time, there's a level of some of these extinction events, some of these changes that are happening are almost outpacing our ability to discover some of it. And so just in that sense like the dynamic nature of the ocean, the literal, but also symbolic depth of it, the immensity, the vastness. I feel like all of these are words that we sometimes use to describe God when we're trying to explain him. And a big difference, obviously, to me, maybe not for some listeners, but a big difference between, the ocean and like our attempt to get to know it. It looks so different than God, because God, of course, is innately, he's relational. And he created these relationships in the ocean and our relationship, perhaps in loving the ocean, to point us to how he values relationships. But I feel like getting to walk in intimacy with God, it's a bit in discovering his character, like discovering different aspects of sea creatures and getting to know, the way certain currents pull around a particular island, or the way this particular seahorse likes to snuggle up in this particular species of algae, and all those details. The relational aspect of that, I think it so beautifully mirrors what it's like to get to know God, even though there's an element of he is so beyond. How much can we truly know all those facets? It's a wonderful place of discovery.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh my gosh, Rachel, I'm floating. I'm enjoying this so much. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I just think the unknown of it is so much better. Like, I think space is interesting. Of course, space is interesting, but
Oh,
and
so
land is
interesting.
interesting. But the idea that there are just places, there are immense amount of places on Earth that we just cannot get to because the ocean is so deep. I just think
Yeah.
that is bananas. Are there coral like reefs or coral families that you're like dying to get to that you haven't been able to see yet?
Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah. One of the beautiful parts of, having done part of my education internationally is I got to, dip my toes into the Indo-Pacific. I got to see some really quirky, a lot of really quirky coral species that we don't have here in the United States. And, reciprocally, as being a US marine scientist, I've gotten to see things here that they don't have in other reefs. I would love to go to the Red Sea. They have some really fascinating attributes to those corals. There's a lot of really heat resistant corals and really interesting research happening to try to understand the mechanics of those corals so that maybe we can understand what makes certain corals more resistant to heat than others. There's a lot of really interesting work happening there, and I would love to someday swim in the Red Sea. I think it's also just a quick note, like this is me nerding out over Bible stories for a sec, but the story of Israel crossing the Red Sea, I, as a marine scientist, read that story completely differently now than I did as a child, because when I picture, God
Wow.
through Moses dividing the Red Sea, it is very likely that there were coral reefs fringing the shores. And so the Israelites had to trek across a reef system that was exposed to the air. And Annie, if you've ever gone down to the ocean during low tide, like rocky, rubbly shoreline, that maybe has algae on it, or maybe you've even, like, do not walk on coral. It's terrible for it, and it can hurt you.
Right.
Don't do that. It damages the animal. But in the case of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, I think it's very likely they were walking on a reefscape. And that would be so precarious, slippery, sharp. I hope they had thick sandals. And it's just wild to me to think about how dangerous that act alone would have been of having to clamber down this reefscape. I've seen injuries from people, slipping on a rock and they accidentally get a piece of coral fragment and their knee or whatever it might be. And it's tremendously painful. Infections can develop really easily. So it colors that story so differently for me now because it's very dramatic. And I think we like to visualize smooth, sandy shores as they descend into the Red Sea, but I don't think that's necessarily how it happened.
Rachel, I have never thought about that one time in my life that I saw an illustration not long ago of the two sides of the water and how there were fish swimming where they could see. And I was like, I never thought about that there would be fish they could see. I certainly have never thought about what they had to, I thought it was a sandy bottom. I thought it was like walking on the beach, but probably not. They were probably walking over
Might have been.
sea life.
Yes, I think that's what was happening. And, I wonder how many little kids were, as they're running away from the Egyptians and following, God and Moses' guidance. I wonder how many little kids were like, oh, look, a sea star, and just like kind of, doing what I would have done as a child, like nerding out over, look at how cool these creatures are. Yeah. It's fascinating to think about.
Will you put your marine biologist brain to the story of Jonah? What do you think about the story of Jonah that's different than I've always thought about Jonah?
Oh, yeah, I've pondered that one a lot. And that's one I get asked about because I think when people think, fishy stories in the Bible, that's the one that immediately comes to mind. The thing that I don't have any, phenomenal insight to offer. Is it possible that a person could be swallowed by a great fish? Absolutely. But I do think it's fascinating that a fish big enough to swallow a person wouldn't immediately try to spit them out, especially if that's not like their food group, if you know what I mean. If it was, one of the many kinds of whales that we see, the few stories that you hear about somebody like almost getting swallowed by a whale it's very typically like whale immediately is like, oh no, whoops, like didn't mean to do that, spits them out.
Yes.
So the fact that the fish, this, marine creature that God provided, the wording is very interesting, the story, that God provided this fish to swallow Jonah, to lead him to obedience. I think it's very interesting that the fish was more obedient in the story than Jonah initially was. I find that very fascinating.
Wow.
So I don't have any great biological insights to offer, but theologically, I think the obedience of that fish is very interesting, especially in contrast to Jonah's behavior.
I have never thought about that. Oh my gosh. So,
There's so much
okay,
cool
okay,
stuff
we're
to
going,
mention.
Rachel. Here we go. I mean, so do you think animals obey God like we obey God?
I think animals obey God oftentimes better than we obey God. And by that, I mean, I feel like there's almost like an innocence or a less distractedness that animals can have, that I wonder sometimes if they hear their creator speaking to them, whatever that looks like for that particular animal. I think they're perhaps more attuned. There's maybe less distraction. There's less pulling at their attention. And so I think they are possibly more likely to respond obediently than we are because of that. And there's of course, this giant, we don't have to get into it. I don't quite know what I think about it, but there's of course this,
you
this
can
big
though.
question of like, do animals have sin natures? Is it just humans? I mean, granted, humans are animals, but like, do other creatures have sin natures? Is that something that just extends to us and then it's a residual effect across creation? Or on any level, is there an element of choice in a creature of, how much free will do they really have? Like, these are questions that I ponder through. Even just the question of, do they have soul, spirit? Like, what does, and again, this is murky territory. There's a lot of people who have very strong feelings on either side, yes or no, with these things. But then there's these tricky kinds of things that you read in the Bible. Like there's this beautiful verse, and I think it's in Ecclesiastes, that says, who is to say that the spirit of an animal goes down into the earth while that of a man goes up into heaven? It's a strange verse, and just the implication that an animal could have a spirit, I think, is fascinating. And then the animal imagery all the way through the Garden of Eden, all the way through to Revelation, the way we see the presence of creation in the garden city of Revelation. I wonder what that ecology is going to look like. Could it be all metaphorical? Perhaps. Could it be literal as well? Perhaps. We don't really know. But it'll sure be fun to find out.
I know people talk a lot about monkeys and apes are smarter than we realize. Horses are smarter than we realize. Elephants are smarter. And then also, is in the ocean, which animals and which fish are we probably underselling for what they actually are cognitively able to do and are actually like smart?
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't have a very concise answer for you, but I do just want to
Great.
Respectfully push back to anybody asking these questions in a way of how do you define smartness or intelligence? We define it as people by our own schema of intelligence, right? A lot of the time, I think partly why humans classify, you could think of whales, even octopus, or these large megafauna, these larger creatures, talking about cats and dogs and the creatures that we're familiar with that we love. You mentioned elephants. I think the reason why we're far more likely to say, oh, this is an intelligent creature, is because they speak a language, metaphorically, they speak a language of intelligence and emotion in a way that makes sense to us. It's close enough to what we do as animals that we can recognize it in them. But what other kinds of intelligence are there? What other sensory systems are there beyond us just being chemically feeling and vertebrate backboned creatures that express and feel this way. I look at jellyfish and ctenophores sometimes, which ctenophores they're basically jellyfish without the intense stinging cells. But they float along in the ocean, and they're brainless. They don't have a spine. And yet there are species of jellyfish that, while they don't have eyes, they can see. Some of them have these little spots. Oftentimes there's like 4 of them along each corner of the bell of the jellyfish, and they can sense light and dark. And this is something that they use to survive. And I think it's interesting because I wouldn't go so far as to say, the jellyfish can't see. It can see something. It sees differently than I do. But the system of seeing is completely different. And so with intelligence, I question, I look at creatures, I even look at plants, and I think to myself, there's so much we do know, there's so much we're learning, but there's so much we don't know. And what we can know with confidence is that God created everything really intentionally to glorify him and to point the rest of his creation to glorifying him. And by getting to know these incredible aspects of creation, understand how we're similar and different, and just learning more, these are opportunities for us to better know God. So I love your question about intelligence. The only thing I can say conclusively is that I think all these creatures, with their varying dimensions of intelligence, we could say, perhaps teach us something about how God views intelligence and wisdom and, common sense, good thinking, all those different attributes. So how does God look at those things? Might be a bit different than how we initially think of it.
That's beautiful.
Do you have a take on that? What do you think?
I don't know that I have a take on it, except when you say that, I think about a podcast I've been listening to about children who are non-communicative, but how their parents are able to communicate with them.
Yeah.
And so it's making me go like, oh yeah, even within the human experience, there are very definitions of success and smarts and intelligence. And so I had never thought about the reason these particular animals seem smart to me is because they are being smart in a way that's recognizable to me.
Yeah,
Like
relatable.
horses are so emotionally intelligent in a way that humans connect with, but that does not mean that cows are not emotionally intelligent, just in a different way.
Yeah, and their emotions. What if cows, for example, can experience emotions that we don't even necessarily feel, or they just, the experience of the same emotions feels different to them. What does it actually feel like to walk in the shoes of a cow and feel what they feel? I have no idea. It's fascinating to think about, though.
It is fascinating. When I am bored, this is what I literally, hand to heaven, when I'm bored, I think about what I don't know about the ocean. That is my sit around and think about thing.
I love that.
So this is, you're adding to my pile of things to think about when I'm bored is, what is a cow actually feeling? Okay, when you're in the ocean, if something is swimming towards you, what gets you excited if you're like, oh my gosh, I love when this particular animal or fish swims toward me? What do you love seeing?
What do I love seeing? Oh, porcupine fish. Always. They're cute. Like, if you haven't looked up a picture of a porcupine fish, you should Google it. They've got the biggest, googliest eyes and these little waggly yellow fins. They're adorable. I love seeing them because they're quirky and friendly and cute. What else do I love seeing? I really love big schools of fish. Doesn't really matter what kind of fish they are. I love the motion of it, especially if they're colorful, like blue tangs. They're just this beautiful midnight blue purple. And it's sort of like if you imagined a really thickly clustered flock of birds, really bright colors, just sort of swirling and spinning in the air, and then maybe coming and swirling around you for a minute and then just disappearing off into the misty blue. It's just phenomenal to see. So any sort of underwater activity like that, big schools of fish really catch my eye. I get really excited about sea turtles. I don't see those super often, but they're always a treat to see. I tell a brief story in the book. I think it's chapter 16 about this giant green sea turtle that snuck up on me and scared the daylights out of me. So sea turtles are a joy. The only creatures I don't love seeing underwater, some listeners might call me crazy, are actually dolphins. I mean, they're fun, don't get me wrong, but they're a little scary because they are so fast, so smart, smart in the way that we understand smart. You look at them and the lights are on, and they're very playful. And that makes me nervous because when you're scuba diving, you're covered in life-sustaining equipment. You've got a regulator in your mouth helping you breathe. It's attached to a scuba cylinder on your back filled with air. And you have fins that you need to be able to control your movement, and you're managing your own buoyancy in the water. But if a dolphin decides to just swim up and start playing with me and my equipment, that scares me. So I love dolphins. They're so fun to see. Right. I am slightly afraid of them because of the playfulness, not going to lie. I'd rather see them from a boat because there's less likelihood that I could get in trouble from a dolphin in a boat.
From a boat? Yeah. Have you ever been afraid while you're scuba diving?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think fear is a really normal... a normal aspect of the underwater diving experience. I think especially when people are learning, but things can go wrong and it can be uncomfortable, and you don't necessarily know what's going to appear out of, the distant water. Sometimes you see that the way the water works, everything's magnified a little bit because the density of water it's greater than air. So it's sort of like a bit of a magnifying glass. So a fish that's actually 2 feet long probably looks more like 2.5 feet is what I'm trying to say. Or everything's just a little magnified. But then there's this bit of a haze off in the distance. You can only see so far because there's sediment in the water. There's all these little bits and pieces. And especially on a windy day, the turbidity, it can make it so that you can't see very far out. It's like swimming a closer point than on land to where you can't see any farther than that. So it's a bit through fog. And there's always a little bit of haze in the distance. There's always, a bit like clouds off on the horizon. And I do get concerned sometimes when the fog takes over and there's maybe a shadow moving through it and I can't quite identify what it is. That could be eerie.
Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation to tell you about one of our incredible partners, Our Place. Listen, if you're in the market for some new cookware, I need you to know about Our Place. First of all, they're adorable. So many cute colors that actually make you excited to cook. And that is coming from a person who does not cook often. But their pans are non-stick, super easy to clean, and free of all those forever chemicals that we do not want anywhere near our food. One of their best-selling items is their Always pan. It's the iconic 10-in-1 pan. From braising and searing to frying and baking, it literally does it all. Eggs slide off effortlessly, and it minimizes the need for excess oil. And they also have the Always Pan Pro, the first nonstick pan with zero coating, made from pure titanium for unbeatable durability with a limited lifetime warranty. Stop cooking with toxic cookware and upgrade to Our Place today. Visit FromOurPlace.com/TSF and use the code TSF, and my friends are going to get 10% off site-wide. With a 100-day risk-free trial, free shipping, and returns, you can experience this game-changing cookware with zero risk. And another incredible partner I get to tell you about, Thrive Cosmetics. Listen, I'm all about minimal makeup in the summer because it is so hot around here and I'd rather spend more of my time by the pool. But I love Thrive Cosmetics because I get a simple, clean, radiant summer look with minimal effort, maximum impact. But the best part is every product is 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients that work with your skin, not against it. All summer long, every time I went to the beach or the pool, I put on one thing: Liquid Lash Extension Mascara. I love it. Y'all do too. You ask about all the time what I'm using. It is Thrive Cosmetics. I'm sure you've seen it. It's the vegan tubing mascara in the turquoise tube that you see all over the internet. It has over 40,000 5-star reviews. There are 6 shades that last all day, even in the pool, without clumping or smudging or flaking, and make sure lashes look like extensions by lengthening and defining them from root to tip. Plus, it's super easy to get off at the end of the day, which I do appreciate. Thrive Cosmetics has donated over $150 million worth of products and cash funds to over 600 giving partners across the U.S. Their donations support 8 major causes, including those affected by cancer, homelessness, domestic abuse, and more, reaching individuals from all walks of life. And their transformative impact is made possible through the support of their wonderful customers. Maximize your look with minimal effort. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/TSF. And my friends are getting an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/TSF. Okay, now back to our conversation with Rachel.
That sounds fun.
Okay, Rachel, so here we go. Everyone is already hearing us talk, but you and I are doing this in 2 parts
Round
because
2.
our technology was not working with us. Round 2. So let's jump in. We just wanted people to know, mostly because we're wearing different outfits. So if they're watching us on YouTube or on Spotify, we have on totally different outfits. And we are going to try to pick up where we left off, but we recorded that weeks ago. So here we are.
We'll do our best.
That's exactly right. Okay, one of the things we've talked about all year on the podcast is seasons: winter, spring, summer, fall. Does the ocean have seasons? Can you tell when the ocean is experiencing seasons? Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's very much a thing. I mean, our whole planet is so interconnected, and probably the number one thing I notice working in more tropical environments is the water temperature drops in the winter. And it doesn't sound, when you consider that tropical water still pretty warm in the winter, it's still like, 75, 72-ish degrees. That's still pretty warm, but your core body temperature is operating at 98. And so if you are in that winter water for very long as a diver, you really notice it. You get very shivery and cold. So that is probably the main thing I notice. Also, like storms, there can be more storms. The weather's just different. Springtime, you get a lot of like random thunder and lightning storms that pop up and then they disperse really quickly. Whereas in the winter, you can have several day long kinds of storms that create a lot of waves, and it might be unsafe to go out on the boat for a week. And then you have a couple good dive days that you can catch before the next winter storm sort of rolls in. So yeah, there's very much seasons at sea. In marine biology world, the ocean has its own seasons, and some parts of the ocean even have like daily cycles, daily seasons where the layering of the water. Yeah, so the ocean is composed of layers, and you've probably heard about some of them. Like we talk about the zones in the context of how light they are typically. So you've probably heard of like the midnight zone, the zone where it's really dark because light can't penetrate that deep. Finding Nemo represents this pretty well as the characters go down and it gets super dark and there's some creepy critters down there. So there's different stratified layers to the ocean, and at certain times of the day and in certain kinds of weather, there can be mixture happening where the layers sometimes, not the light part, but the critters in some of the layers, especially like plankton, jellyfish, creatures that drift, can mix throughout the water column and move up or down. So there's almost like these daily mass migrations of little creatures like plankton that move around on a daily basis, and they change seasonally as well. There's also blooms. So in the same way that like birds migrate from one place to another, or, you might hear about like an algae bloom in a local pond. There's different blooms with organisms in the ocean. So one of the ones you might hear about is like jellyfish blooms, where a lot of jellyfish wash up on a beach somewhere, and there's seasons to the lifespans of these creatures. And so sometimes there's a very large quantity that correlate with a particular time of year or a particular pattern that they have. So lots of different potential for seasons when you think about the ocean.
It is just, I'm fascinated by this. It's why I loved your book so much, If the Ocean Has a Soul. Tell me, what do you know and learn about God from seeing seasons in the ocean that I may not have experienced yet?
Oh, good question. I think for me, well, in general, change is hard. And there's something very beautifully representative of how dynamic the ocean is. It's constantly changing. And these seasons, some of the ones that I've listed are good examples of how we see transition phases in the water, and can happen on a daily basis or a weekly basis, yearly basis, all these different transitions and seasons and migrations and patterns. And there's something incredibly reassuring for me as somebody who struggles with navigating changes to know that God designed it that way very intentionally. And so what does that tell us about his character? Well, I think God can use those changes to create beautiful things. And there's a variety in it that glorifies him. There's greater opportunities to glimpse biodiversity. If you're ever in a coastal area and you're paying attention to the birds around you, it's really interesting to maybe do a quick Google search or pick up a handbook of seabirds, migratory birds, and look at how they change throughout the year. Out at the park where I worked, the winter birds were completely different than the birds we'd get in the spring or the summer. You saw pelicans in the winter, which were my favorites, but they would disappear in the warmer months and you wouldn't see them for a good long while. And then 6 months later, they'd be back scooping up fish with their giant beaks. So there's this beautiful diversity, these beautiful differences that come about because of the change that we see because of the seasons. And that is something that gives us different glimpses of different facets of God's character. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, yes, I love it. I mean, we've talked about it, but you know that I think the ocean is so fascinating, but I don't get in it. And so I want to learn everything from you getting into it.
Well, hence the seabird analogy too, because that is something you can witness without having to get in the water.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. At the end of the book, you talk about a really interesting scripture I have read but never paid attention to. It's Revelation 21:1, and I'm dying to hear you talk about this because it says, Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea.
Plot twist.
Right. So Rachel, what happens? Does that mean when Jesus comes back, there's only land, there's no ocean?
Well, spoiler alert from the book, and it's just a very small section, so I don't mind spoiling it at all. But I don't believe it will mean that there will be no more literal sea. And the reason why I think that is because when you look at the cultural context of what people believed at the time that the Bible was written, you come to realize that for the ancients who lived in the time when this book was written and the way that people thought about it, the ocean was chaos and destruction. It was unknown and uncertain and disorderly and confusing and unpredictable. They didn't have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration giving them weather forecasts. If a ship went off into the distance and never came back, you never found out what happened to it. There weren't search and rescue parties. There weren't helicopters that could come in and rescue you. They didn't have flotation devices quite the same way we do. All these different aspects of how they viewed the ocean factor into how they reference the ocean in the Bible, which when you go back and you read some of the Psalms that talk, like we can read some of the Psalms that talk about the ocean as if it's coming from a context of lots of beauty. But in their minds, it was a place of disorganization and chaos and destruction. And that lends a different insight to how we might understand those verses. So when I read that in the recreated creation that God is going to have in his coming kingdom, when I read about that there's not going to be any sea, there will no longer be any sea, the way I interpret it as that the sea is a metaphor for the destruction and chaos and the lack of peace and certainty. So in other words, there will no longer be any sea means there will no longer be any destruction. It's going to be peaceful and beautiful and recreated, and all the uncertainty and the fear that comes with it, the mythical creatures that lived in the corners of these maps that people drew back in the olden days, we won't have to worry about any of that anymore because we will be in the presence of God. So I don't have much of a concern about there not being any ocean in heaven. I feel like God invested so much creativity and effort into designing the oceans that we have here on Earth. I can't imagine him
Yes.
recreating our world in a way that the ocean didn't exist. But I think that the connotations that we've culturally had about the ocean will shift in the new kingdom. Does that make sense in terms of
Yeah,
yeah,
I love
yeah,
it.
okay.
Yeah, girl.
It's hard to explain some of this stuff because I'm so much more succinct in the book. Like that whole explanation is a very short paragraph in the book. And so I feel like I get incredibly long-winded talking about it.
No, it's awesome. That's the joy of a podcast and a book is that people can read it, but then we get to hear from you. That's the joy of what we get to do. So you're doing
Well, it's
this
so fun to
exactly
chat
right.
with
This is
you.
everything that I was hoping for.
Oh, great.
Okay, so then, I mean, we can't know this from necessarily from scripture, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how will the ocean be different? How do you imagine, what's some imagination around how the ocean will be different when the earth is new again? Like, I mean, I know we've put plastic in it, I know we've put junk in it. How will it be different, you think, when the earth is new?
I don't know is the short answer, but I do think God will use it as another palette to portray his character. So in the same way that the ocean right now is a representation of God's design for creation, but it also mirrors the brokenness of our world. I think any ocean that exists in the heavenly kingdom will mirror God's intention for creation to the nth degree of having fulfilled his plan for all things without any of the brokenness, without the destruction or the fear. I think when we look at the ocean, there will still maybe be storms, but instead of being fearful, we will be in awe of God's power without it feeling like a threat. I think when we see a wacky ocean creature, we won't have this maybe disgust or the same level of bewilderment. We'll just be marveling at the attributes of God's design that we see, and we'll be able to engage with all the creatures in the ocean, every living thing, and praising God together. I firmly believe that humans are designed to be the choir directors of creation's praises towards God. We're part of that creation, but he's also put us in a special position of leadership as image bearers to creation. And so in heaven, when everything is restored, including our relationship with the created worlds, when God has recreated everything and we don't have to worry anymore about the destruction, you listed a couple examples, plastics, things like that. I think that healed relationship of us to creation and of creation to God, us to God, that's all going to just be the most beautiful ecology, far beyond anything I could ever imagine or try to describe. So I don't know what it will look like, but that I can say with confidence that God will be so revealed through it all in a perfect way, not the flawed way that we currently experience his image in the world.
I think we talked about this a little bit in the first half, but I am dying to talk to you about it again. But what do you think is below what we can see in the ocean? Like, you know how I feel about megs. I love megalodons. I so hope that they are in there and we just haven't gotten them yet. I so hope that they're down there. What do you think is in the ocean that we don't know?
Oh, golly. You mean like right now, present day, not like
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. That's totally none of our business, but we are down in there.
So much of the ocean that we have not mapped out or been able to explore just because of the technical difficulties of getting down there. As technology gets better and better, we have more means to be able to explore these things. So we'll continue to discover new stuff. I think considering the pressure of the weight of all the water that sits on top of anything that's living down along the seafloor, way down deep where it's hard to get to, I think probably most of the creatures we discover from here on out are going to be invertebrates.
Oh my gosh, right, because they get squished.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool.
Their bodies
That is
are
so
generally
cool.
better at withstanding the pressure. Their bodies are designed for all that pressure. If you actually took a deep sea fish, for example, and you brought it up to the surface, its poor little body would explode out from itself. It would just sort of, so it's very disturbing to me to see pictures of deep sea fish that are taken on like the deck of a boat, because I know that fish doesn't look right. If you took a picture of it in its home at depth, its body would look differently, because it's not adapted to be living with one atmosphere of pressure on its body. It's adapted to be living with multiple atmospheres of pressure. So I have a hunch that if there's things we haven't discovered, which I'm certain that there are, most of them are probably super cool invertebrates, and wacky colors. It's really common to find creatures that have evolved down there to produce their own light, or to have a different form of light sensing anatomy. So there's a lot of fish with weird eyes that function very different than ours do. Maybe they're adapted to seeing very small traces of light, or they don't have eyes at all. That's what I can safely speculate. I think we're going to keep finding creatures like that. As for any megalodons, I will be incredibly surprised if we find something like that.
Oh, Rachel, that's tough to hear.
As sad as I am, I know.
Not even below
I'm
the
sorry.
trench? Have you seen the movie?
I am generally a very fearful person. So I steer clear of movies like that. You probably saw my Jaws reference in the book, but I have not even seen Jaws, the classic, which I do plan to remedy that someday, but I don't really want to instill more fear in my mind than what I already have. I have a healthy dose of appreciation for the dangers.
Yes. One of the most fascinating things about you is you get in the ocean as many opportunities as you get, but you don't watch any of the movies. I do not get in the ocean, and I watch all the movies. I love them. I mean, no kidding. I think Meg is in like the original, and Meg 2. I really like Meg 2 as well. They're like in my top 8 movies and like
That's
ever.
incredible.
I love them.
If we're ever together in person, I would love to watch the Meg with you. That would be like the best watch party I could imagine. So that would be great.
I got to watch Meg 2 with someone this summer for the first time, and it brings me so much joy to expose people to the Meg and Meg 2.
So do you
just
think
know I find a lot of joy in that.
I love that. Do you think there's a correlation between your lack of desire to get in the ocean and your exposure to this media?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question that is exactly why I don't get in the ocean. Also because you can't breathe in there. And so I'm also just very not interested in not being able to breathe.
You'll have to get scuba
I would like to, that's right. Here's my plan, Rachel. I just want to tell you my plan, and you can tell me if you support this. My plan when Jesus comes back and we have a new earth is to be very ocean forward. I just feel like everything's going to be a lot safer when we're in the eternity. And so I'm like, yeah, let's get in when it can't cost me my life because I'm an eternal being. That's kind of what I've chalked myself up to. Like, when this is forever, I will get in the ocean.
I love that. But if I can gently push back theologically, if you are in Christ, your eternal life has begun. Like, we as Christians move from life to life. And so, and please understand, I'm not trying to push you on like a practical functional level and to get in the ocean. Right. But theologically, that doesn't quite hold up.
You're correct. Theologically.
Stay with love.
Exactly right. Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation one more time to tell you about one of our incredible partners, Hiya Health. I know we're trying to keep my mini BFFs healthy, and taking their vitamins can be a battle. That's why we're big fans of Hiya Health around here. They've got the pediatrician-approved chewable vitamin my mini BFFs love, but it doesn't have all the gummy junk or sugar. Hiya also now has Kids Daily Greens Plus Superfoods, which is a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for kids and packed with 55 whole food ingredients. You just scoop it out, shake it up with milk or any non-dairy beverage, and your kids get a delicious and nutritious boost. On FaceTime recently, my nephew Sammy gave his superfoods drink 16 thumbs up, you guys. 16. That is a big endorsement for my favorite little redhead. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. You're going to get 50% off your first order. So to claim this deal, you got to go to hiyahealth.com/thatsoundsfun. Go to HIYAHEALTH HEALTH.com/that sounds fun. And you're going to get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. And now back to finish up our conversation with Rachel.
That sounds fun.
Well, you know what we do is every week on our AFD Week in Review email, we let people know who I'm interviewing. And if they have any
Yes.
questions, they get to ask questions. And so Dawn has a question for you. She wants to know, do you have a favorite fiction book that involves the ocean? Do you have a novel that you love about the ocean?
Great question. So many. My favorite that I've read recently, let me look up the author's name real quick.
Yeah.
It's called The Mountain in the Sea, and it is by Ray Naylor. It is a science fiction eco-punk novel. And
Eco-punk! I love it.
Eco-punk. Yeah, it was my first dabble into like eco-punk culture, and I really enjoyed it as an ecologist. It was super fun. Very different concepts. So the general premise, without spoiling anything that you wouldn't already read on the back of the book, the story follows a marine biologist in the future who discovers a group of octopus on this island in, I believe, the Indo-Pacific, that have created their own culture. The octopus have developed a culture. And for frame of reference,
Wow.
anthropologists argue that one of the things that sets humans apart from every other animal is that we are capable of creating cultures. And so his book is pushing the philosophical concept of what is human, but he's doing it in a science fiction way, and it's a fun read. Very good, like, insights into current marine biology issues extrapolated into the future. So I definitely recommend that one. It's fun.
Okay. I might audiobook that one. I tend to, on my Saturdays for my Sabbath, is I do a puzzle and I listen to an audiobook. And I try to finish both in the same day. And so that will be next weekend. What did you feel about Remarkably Bright Creatures? Did you read that one about octopus?
Yeah,
and
that was
how
so
smart they are?
sweet. Yeah, there's octopus are
Yeah, it was
having a
so
heyday
sweet. I
ever
loved
since
it.
like my octopus teacher came out. Like there's all these books and documentaries and YouTube videos, and everybody's obsessed with octopus right now, and I'm here for it. It's great. They deserve their time in the limelight.
That's right. Who is the smartest in the ocean? Which animal or fish are you like, they are legitimately? I mean, I know we talked about it last time that a lot of them are smart in languages that we don't speak. But do you
Yes.
have one that you're like, this is the one that speaks human the best?
Yeah,
Did we say this? I can't remember.
probably octopus. I feel like cephalopods in general, so cuttlefish, octopus, squid, they're remarkably bright creatures. they have a very comparable type of intelligence to what I think we identify as intelligence. And that's partly why I think people are so obsessed with them, is because there's a level to which we relate. And something about the ecopunk novel I suggested is that he, again, takes that concept of they're incredibly smart and extrapolates, and what are the consequences, answers that question. So Remarkably Bright Creatures, it's such a sweet, cathartic story, so character driven. I love the mop bucket scenes. It's just a good comfort read.
It was really sweet. I think it'll be really fun if our friends are looking, like Dawn, who's looking for a novel to read if the ocean has a soul, as like, here's the real story. Here's what's actually happening down there. And here's your experience there where your faith met your work. And then have these novels of going like, oh, those are the animals she's talking about.
Yeah,
Those
it's like
are the ones.
very...
So,
my book and these two other books we've mentioned are incredibly different. So that'll give you a good foray into the underwater world.
That's exactly right. What has it been like this summer with your book being out and people responding to it? What has the response been like? How's that felt?
It's been incredibly sweet. I feel super encouraged. The response has been lovely. I get a lot of DMs on Instagram because I'm very active on the app, and just such kind messages from people. A lot of moms who have daughters who want to be marine biologists someday, asking for tips and advice, and a lot of current students, either undergrads or in graduate school, who are having a lot of questions about faith and science. And those messages in particular are my favorite because I wrote the book with that demographic in mind. If I could have had a book when I was an undergrad, with all my questions about evolution and climate change and how do I read the Bible rightly in its cultural context in light of science, and how do I understand these things, long before I discovered books like the Lost World series or Aldo Leopold or anything like that, this was the book that I wish I'd had in hindsight. Was the one that I have had the opportunity to write. So it's been incredibly sweet. But as you know, when you write a book, like, it can be overwhelming. I very much have had to visualize, like, I wrote the book and now I'm putting it on the shelf and it belongs to the readers, and God is going to do with it what he chooses to do with it. Yes. So for me, from this point on, it's pretty hands off. Like, I get to have these delightful conversations with people and, engage in DMs and send emails and things. But my work feels like it's completed on this project. And that is very satisfying and a little hard to let go of, but mostly just very lovely. Mm-hmm. Thanks for asking.
It's Christine Caine says a lot that God puts books in hands. And that's it. You're right. The day this book goes from yours to ours, you're done. It's brand new to all of us, but you've finished the obedient work. So it's such a good book, Rachel. I enjoyed it. I mean, I want to show our watching audience how many tabs. Look at all these tabs from when I read the book. I mean, I just loved it. I loved it so much. For our listening friends, the book is 250 pages, and I bet there's 25 tabs. I bet there's one every 10 pages. So thank you so, so much for this work. What a fun, unique, there's not another book like it. And so I'm just so excited to get to read it and share it. Is there anything we didn't talk about you want to make sure we talk about?
I wanted to ask, maybe we chatted about this before, but I remember you said in our last conversation that your favorite chapter is chapter 4. Can I ask why?
Yes.
Chapter 4? Was it because of the
I
sharks? Is that why you love the shark stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
Leviathans in the Deep is the name of the chapter. And yes, that is why, is because I just love, there is something to me about sharks and big fish that we can't, that are more powerful than me and that are dangerous to me in some ways, that is the level of excitement I want in my life. That's the level. I want to know that there's an oceanic animal that is not safe and I don't want to get in there. So I just loved reading about your experience with sharks and what your thoughts on Leviathan and scripture. And so that's why it was my favorite.
Oh, well, thank you. That's so cool to hear. And I love your enthusiasm for these creatures. Like, sharks are, they're made the villains in movies. And so I love that even though you appreciate these movies, you have this just passion for these creatures. It's really cool to get to see. So thanks for sharing.
I do love them. I think they're so fascinating. Okay, well, the last question we always ask, Rachel, is because the show is called That Sounds Fun, tell me what you do for fun.
Oh, that's a great question. Lately, I've been reading a lot, which is lovely. I really enjoy going for nature walks, just getting outside, even just doing a little lap down my driveway and looking at the birds. I found a robin's nest.
Where do you live?
Day. I currently live in the middle of the Midwest, which is super ironic because I am a marine biologist living in a triple landlocked state. I'm in Nebraska right now. God has a sense of humor. What can I say? So I'm curious to see what he has next for me. In the context of what sounds fun, something that I would really love that sounds so fun to me would be to get back into research in some capacity. So I'm currently job searching. I'm also looking into PhD programs because that's just, I really want to learn. I want to learn so badly, but it's a big commitment, especially in the ecological sciences, biological sciences, to do something like that. So I'm just very prayerfully pondering the future and talking with some friends right now about some dolphin research that we might try to organize and put up together. So stay tuned for that. So what sounds fun? Dolphin research? Yes, please. Maybe
Yes,
some
agreed.
more marine science research in the future. Oh yeah, I'm here for it. Maybe, I don't know. I really like this whole writing thing. Writing is super fun. Maybe I'll get to do another book someday. I don't know. Lots of options. But I'm
It's amazing.
really grateful, really thankful that God has shown me all these different facets of how to engage with his world in such a meaningful but also genuinely fun way, and that I get to do this for work. That's nuts. Yeah.
Yes. I know. I feel the same way. Well, your book is amazing, and all you know is, and we can keep up with everything you're doing on Instagram, correct?
Yeah, Instagram, and I post updates to my website as well, rachelgjordan.com.
Great.
So if you want to hear some other podcasts, or I'll post the link to this one on there when it's up and ready. But other podcasts, I have some free resources. I have a newsletter. So if you would like a resource about faith and science and whether the two can coexist, I can send you that if you sign up for my newsletter. Yeah, lots of fun stuff on the website. Behind the scenes pictures from the book, because everybody loves those. Who doesn't want to see Porky the porcupine fish and all his pudgy splendor? So those are two great ways to connect with me.
I love it. We'll connect. We'll link to all of that for people. So, Rachel, thank you for making time to do this twice.
Oh my goodness.
So kind. Thank you for dealing with technology so that we got to do this twice.
Being on That Sounds Fun is a dream come true for me. I know I was telling you before we got started today, but I was listening very, very regularly to That Sounds Fun in the fields when I was living out the stories that are written about in my book. And so this is such a sweet full circle experience to get to be on the podcast with you, Annie, and talking with you and about the things that were happening in my life, what I was learning and doing when I discovered your podcast for the first time. So this is such a treat. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, what a gift from God. I'm really thankful too.
Truly.
So, you guys, isn't she brilliant? Oh my gosh, I could have talked to her for another hours and hours and hours. If you are fascinated by the ocean like me, go grab your copy of Rachel's book, If the Ocean Has a Soul. Make sure you're following her on social media. She is Shoreline Soul. Tell her thank you for being on the show. How fun was that? How fun was that? If you enjoyed this episode, I think you're also going to love some of our other episodes where we talk about creation. So episode 178 with Dr. Matthew Sleeth, where we talk about faith and trees. Y'all, if you have not read Dr. Matthew Sleeth's book about trees, it's fascinating. Or episode 202 with Beth Moore, where we talked about vines when her book Chasing Vines released. If you have any questions from this episode, just drop them in the Q&A box in your Spotify app if you're a Spotify listener like me, or send them to us on Instagram at That Sounds Fun Podcast. We'll try to get the answers to you from there. If you need anything else from me, you know I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Anywhere you need me, that's where you can find me. I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home and do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Today, what sounds fun to me, listen, it is hot in Nashville. It is very hot. I would love to go to the pool. I'm not sure it's happening today, but it's in my spirit. I'm going to give it a go. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you back here on Monday as we walk toward fall and we walk toward harvest. We're going to talk about the harvest on Monday with my friend, one of my favorite leaders in the church, Dan Blythe. I can't wait to introduce y'all. You're going to love him. We'll see y'all back here on Monday.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun. Oh, that sounds fun. Check 1, 2 on the microphone. Annie F. Downs in your car to your home. Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light. When you're down, get you feeling right. Oh man, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. That sounds fun.